Welcome to the Life of Hair. My name's James Atkinson, and in this episode I'm going to do something that a lot of people have maybe gone past, but it's the fundamental core technique for balayage, the classic, the epitome of a balayage. It's something that I believe everybody should know about, everyone should be able to do, because it's a bit like cutting hair or doing foils. If your fundamental skills are on point, you can then move on to more creative techniques. So in this video, I'm going to go through the really simple placement and the effectiveness of actually such a classic, basic and simple technique. It's not clever, there's no smoke and mirrors, there's no backcombing, it's just pure balayage. Here's the result, and you'll see how I do this as we go through the video. Honestly, once you know how to do this, you'll want to do it all the time. It is such a straightforward technique. I do it on the daily, and it's great for refreshers as well. You just don't paint all the way to the end. You'll have seen thousands on Instagram, and one of the main reasons that I made this video is because a lot of people said to me that they struggled with how to place the hair section by section for a balayage. So we're really going to go through that in this particular video. And I know some of you are going to write in the comments at some point that I haven't put cotton wool or cling film in between my sections. Well, that is for a reason, guys, because the main reason for that is the control of the consistency of my product means that I won't get any bleeding or pressing onto any of the hair underneath, because I've mixed it to a consistency of 1 to 1.5 ratio. So that would be the equivalent of doing 10 grams of powder and 15 grams of lightener. And that is the sweet spot for me for being able to just paint on the hair freely without fear of it bleeding or pressing. Do remember though, guys, if you're not going to cover it with something, it's not going to get the 6 or 8 or 9 levels of lift that the lightener that you are using will say. You have to be aware that the product will dry out, and that will decrease its effectiveness. So that's all the points that I need to tell you. Let's get on with the technique. And if you enjoy this, then share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up. I really appreciate hearing from you guys. Pre-section for this technique, very, very simple. A hot cross bun like you do a tint, but with the hair in the natural parting that it's going to be worn. 2.5 inch sections from the outline, and then split those first sections into 2. Over direct to the right for the right hand side and the left for the left hand side. This creates extra softness when using over direction. So that is really, really important, guys, to remember, especially in these areas that are around and underneath the occipital bone in the back of the head. The product that we're using here is just normal blue powder bleach, but mixed at the ratio that I said about in the intro. It is so important, guys, that you accurately mix the product that you're using so you can get the exact consistency that you need for this job every single time. The consistency of this product is paramount to a good result for this technique. Another 2.5 inch section, and then we simply take out a triangle. Here on the right hand side, I've just taken the triangle on the outer edge, and we do exactly the same thing. We build up the product nice and gently by applying a small amount and then reapplying over and over and over again. It is so important that we just go in with a small amount of product and build it up, because if we don't, that is how we get blobbing, we get patches, and we get colour that in places we really, really didn't want it. With this particular technique, I'm not painting through all the ends either. It is a technique that is classically not heavy on the saturation through the ends, and this is a classic version of a balayage. Another triangular shaped section, and try and keep the lights
the highlights at the top of the sections away from each other. So leave a little gap in between your triangles, just so you don't get too many highlights too close to each other. Same again on this left hand side as we did on the right hand side. Triangle section, building up the saturation and not painting too heavily through the ends. Another 2-inch section and we are right up into the crown now. This is such a salon savvy technique. In 3 sections we've made it to the crown. It doesn't take long to do at all. And once you get your head around painting the sections, you can have this whole technique sewn up in 35 minutes. If you have got too much product on your brush when you initially put your brush into the product, then always start on the ends. This means that you can evenly distribute that product and then go back in and start to paint your V's. It is really, really important that you don't go into doing the V's with too much product. And here's a hot tip. I use my elbow to anchor my arm to create a nice solid blend, especially when I'm doing the points of light at the top. The joy of this technique is it just repeats itself over and over. So once you've got the hang of it, it is so easy to pull it out the bag any day of the week, anytime, anywhere. And it's a great upsell for your clients who want a little bit of something new. Once we've got to this section, we're going to diagonally section from just underneath the crown right through to the front hairline. 2 inches in depth, exactly like all the other sections. Painting in V's, keeping the saturation of the product nice and even, and working our way to the front hairline. On the front hairline, I specifically don't paint both sides of my section, but this is totally your personal choice. I just like it softer round the face. I can't stress to you guys how important it is to just gently layer the product on and make sure that if you're doing a classic technique where you're just looking for multi-dimensional lightness, that you don't paint all the way through the sections. The highlight parts of this balayage, the points of light that I'm painting currently, are not going too high above the parietal ridge. That is especially important for softness. Quick hot tip, if you get too much product too high up the head, then just use your pinky to soften and redistribute the product out. The saturation has to go from thin to thick, So it is really important that you just use your pinky there to soften out any hard edges, especially at the top of the highlights. This classic balayage technique is one of my absolute favourites. I use it all the time in the salon. There's never a time where you think that hasn't turned out an absolute peach. Because we are using a freehand painting technique though, do remember that you're not going to get the sort of lightness you will from foil, or if you separated this out with cling film. Don't expect super blonde results, because it just isn't that kind of technique. The principles of this technique are the same all the way through. 2-inch deep sections, triangles taken out of each section of approximately 2 inches in depth and width themselves. If you just remember that as you work through, it will be so easy for you. 2-inch sections, 2-inch triangles. And around this front hairline, I'm only painting one side of the triangle. This just gives me a nice face frame, but doesn't give me too much colour around the face. However, if you want more colour around the front, then paint both sides by all means. Around the face, it's important to work out which bits of hair you want to paint and don't want to paint. In this instance, I've picked up the whole front hairline to give that beautiful face framing feel. There's the technique all painted, finished and ready to process. Such a simple technique to do in the salon, and has absolutely beautiful sun-kissed results. There it is, all finished. An absolute winner as far as I'm concerned of a salon-friendly technique. If you've enjoyed this episode of The Life of Hair, guys, and you've got something from it, I'd love to hear from you. Tell me about it in the comments, and I will see you next Sunday for another episode of The Life of Hair.